We don't care about this, just speaking. Yeah? Okay, we are also recording on streaming.
30 years as climatology.
Yeah.
I think from
Yeah.
1990
Good
to
afternoon, good
2022.
morning,
2020.
good evening.
Yeah.
We are also recording on streaming. Thank you very much to all participants, online or presential. Those presential, even better, because today is Sunday, it's lunchtime, so thank you very much for your participation. Let's talk about the international cooperation for strengthening climatological and meteorological infrastructure and services. Why is needed that international cooperation? Which are the benefits of such activities? Let me start from the Spanish perspective. So there is investment ongoing and in the past, and I guess in the future, on international cooperation activities. And sometimes people ask, request, which are the benefits of such actions? One of the purposes of this, the objectives of this talk, that exchange, should be to show that only a coordinated international, regional, national action would have enough benefits, not only in terms of accountable items, but in terms of societal and whole progress in climate action. We need coordinating, we need learning together, we need to move forward together in order to have effective action. Even that, a most efficient investment and returns from all the players, donors, UN system, and finally the beneficiaries. So we will start with an exceptional participant. This is the director of, Felipe Lucio, the director of the Department of Climate, Member Services and Cooperation of the World Meteorological Organization. He's the responsible of this new, was an evolution of the old cooperation department since 2021, 2022, but he was previously the director of the Global Framework of Climate Services. He has an extraordinary background on those collaboration activities, and he came from Mozambique, where he was director and permanent representative of Mozambique with WMO, so the top responsible of meteorology and climate in his country since 1999 until 2007. And he faced also several major disasters, so he has a strong knowledge on this. So I will bring now, I stop here, I give the floor to Felipe in order to set the scene about how this from the UN's perspective, this international cooperation will play. You have the floor, Felipe.
Well, Jose, thank you very much, and good afternoon. To talk about international cooperation in the field of meteorology, hydrology, and the related environmental sciences, we have to go back to the origins of the World Meteorological Organization. And the origin of the World Meteorological Organization dates back to 1873, when in Vienna, the first Meteorological Congress was organized. At that time, the participants agreed that one of the main objectives of the World Meteorological, well, at the time, World Meteorological Organization, International Meteorological Organization, was to facilitate the exchange of weather information, mostly to support weather forecasting for marine activities. And the international exchange was to be across borders, because as you know, in order to predict the weather here in Dubai, you need to know what happened in Japan 2 weeks ago, you need to know what happened in the US 2 weeks ago, and so on and so forth. So from the international Meteorological Organization, in 1947 in Washington, D.C., a meeting of meteorological directors agreed that they needed a convention to regulate how the international exchange of data should have been organized. So in 1950, on the 23rd of March, the WMO Convention was approved as an intergovernmental convention, and from that day on, we had the World Meteorological Organization, which then became a specialized agency of the United Nations in December 1951. Just to give you a perspective, WMO is a membership organization. We have 193 members, and those 193 members are the ones who basically support the activities of the WMO. WMO does not have its own operational network, does not have its own facilities. What WMO has is the membership of the organization, and it relies on the work done by each of the members in cooperation to allow the exchange and things which I will talk much later on. WMO is the second oldest UN organization in the world, and it coordinates mostly around 200,000 experts who contribute in different domains. It was the co-founder of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change following the first World Climate Conference. It was the co-founder of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change following the second World Climate Conference. And in general, WMO facilitates the work of its members in terms of observations. And from those observations, we get vast amounts of data which are processed to generate numerical weather predictions, which are the basis for the production of weather forecasts. And the way the forecasts are generated depends, first of all, on what we call global producing centers, which are countries with the capability in terms of supercomputing capability, who generate the first NWP products. These NWP products are then disseminated to regional regional specialized meteorological centers and other centers, and eventually go cascading down to national meteorological and hydrological services, who then generate their weather forecasts. We do have about 30 programs, out of which we generate different activities, supported by 2 commissions and 1 research board, following a reform which was undertaken in the last 8 years. And we also have quite a number of capacity development activities in the form of projects of about 125 million or plus in projects, supporting our main long-term goals, which are 5, with a vision of enabling the world, all nations, especially the most vulnerable, to be more resilient to the socioeconomic consequences of extreme weather, climate and water, and other environmental effects, and underpinning sustainable development through the best possible services, whether on land, at sea, and in the air. There's no single country who could undertake weather forecasting themselves. In order to enable weather forecasting to occur, we need the exchange of data, and WMO promotes the free exchange of data. That international cooperation, that collaboration has been the essence of the work of WMO, which together with the provision of guidelines and standards and capacity development activities have enabled the development of weather forecasts to start with, all the way to climate forecasts which we generate today. So all the advances which we've had in terms of observations, improving model quality, improving the accuracy of forecasts, has all been possible because of international cooperation. And this is why international cooperation is vital for the work of the meteorological community, but is also vital to ensuring that society and the different socioeconomic sectors are provided with tailored, actionable, and user-oriented products and services to carry out their activities and support both policy but also planning. Today we can benefit from forecasts from the next minute all the way to climate change projections. And this has been possible, again, because of this international cooperation. But despite all our best efforts, we still have limitations. And those limitations are mostly in terms of observations. We have many countries around the world, particularly in least developed countries in Africa, in the Pacific, and in Latin America, who have limitations in terms of their observational capacities. We have a limitation in terms of human resources. The quantity and quality in terms of expertise of the staff in most meteorological and hydrological services is very limited. But we also have limitations in terms of advising and providing specific products and services for both policy, planning, and also decision making. And this is why the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on the 23rd of March 2022 launched a new initiative called the Early Warning for All initiative, which is led by the World Meteorological Organization and the UNDRR, with a view to cover all citizens on the planet with effective early warning systems by 2027. Of course, this is a major undertaking, and to enable this initiative to be successful, we rely on cooperation, and we have different instruments supporting the Early Warning for All initiative. We have, for example, the Sustainable Observation Financing Facility, intended to support those least developed countries and small island developing states who do not have a capability in terms of observations, to have the basic observations needed to improve the quality of forecasts. And we also have another major initiative, which is the Climate Early Warning, Climate Risk Early Warning Initiative called CRUISE, originally initiated by France, but today supported by many different partners. So, in summary, if I could, in few words, summarize why is international cooperation so vital and so important, it is because we need to share expertise, we need to share knowledge, we need to share research outputs so that we can provide even the most and the least developed countries, who are the countries who are in need, with the needed capability for them to provide adequate weather, climate, and hydrological services. Over to you, José.
Thank you very much, Felipe. Thank you. Just to stress the need for this, people think that the World Meteorological Organization is just only a provider of, or the Met Service are a provider of data. But there is a long list of long chain of activities that involves involves the World Meteorological Organization and involves other UN agencies. So there are major efforts under UN to make this, let's say, approaching to societies, governments, and regional institutions. In that way, I will introduce the second speaker in following the stream of African Union. African Union is the main regional organization that drives action and takes responsibilities in Africa. And there is one regional center, as a Pan-African center that support also regional centers. That is the application, if I say it correctly, applications climate,
Meteorology.
Climate Meteorology Applications Center for Development for Africa, for all Africa, with different focuses and support to the regional climate centers. So I will introduce the Director General of this Climate Center, André Kamga. Dr. Kamga is a reputed researcher, so he has expertise in a very specific topic that's forecasting skills. So this is something that's, believe me, not easy. So he's a true scientist that has become a manager. He has the responsibility in the last years to evolve ACMAT to a true and full regional climate center, and now is driving ACMAT to have a full let's say, technical arm for African Union. So, André, you have the opportunity to show us what's the perspective from the region, Africa region, on that topic of international cooperation. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. So I would start with some words on ACMAT mission, and then the continental plans and strategies related to meteorology on which ACMAT is operating, and then address let's say, the challenges that we have today in supporting particularly early warning for all, the early warning value chain. Yeah, so on the mission of the center, we have two axes basically. The first is to act as a continental weather and climate watch center for Africa. And the second is to be the center of excellences for the applications of meteorology for sustainable development. So the first part of the mission is related to services, providing weather and climate watch at continental level. And the second, which is the development of applications, involve developing methods, tools, new products, undertake research and innovation, facilitate exchange of data sets with databases, structuring data sets, and share it across Africa and between Africa and the world. So for the first part of the mission, as Weather and Climate Watch Center for Africa, so ACMAT became a WMO designated regional climate center in May 2015, and it is now a continental advisory center for African Union under one of the programs that is contributing to early warning for all, called African Multi-Hazard Early Warning and Early Action System. Then on the application side, in collaboration with partners, mostly funded by EU Research and Innovation Program, we have developed the methods and tools, first of all for climate monitoring, weather watch, also IT, databases, as well as particularly research on downscaling information. As a continental center, we have recently, through the WMO data policy, resolution on data policy, have a significant expansion of global centers products that we have access to. So one of the core activities in the methods and tools development is to provide downscaling tools which bring global information to national and eventually local level, and train the national meteorological and hydrological services in the application of these tools. We put emphasis on research specifically with our partners in Europe, in the US, to actually validate downscaling tools that are available and to make them useful to Africa. One of the clear effects on the services is in seasonal forecasting, where we have a continental climate outlook every month, followed in the regions by a regional outlook for West, Central, Eastern, Southern Africa, and then at the national level with national climate outlooks. I should mention that international cooperation is being key to bring these downscaling tools at the national level, because we are called today to have weather or climate information at the city level. So we have worked with a partner in Belgium to actually set up a downscaling facility for the city of Niamey in Niger, targeting warnings for high temperatures and heat waves. So it has been done only for one city, and we are planning to have this expanded in most of the African major cities, given the exposure that is growing with the migration of population in big cities across Africa. So now one of the main challenges is to mobilize actually national level resources to invest in this, because international cooperation will bring support, but to expand those developments in a given country would require substantial input at the country level. Recently, particularly this year with the 3 major events that occurred in Africa, we had the opportunity to see exactly what we should do at the national level. One of these events was the storm Daniel in which hit Libya. The second one is the cyclone Freddy, which is today the longest lasting cyclone in the record. And these two demonstrated the need to really provide good information at the city level, and in some cases in the quarters or the districts within a city. And to do this, we have actually found out that the downscaling will work better if we can have observing systems downscale also at the city level, so many stations within a city to make measurements. Then the processing and prediction systems at a kilometer or less than a kilometer scale. And then from there, the weather forecast for the city, looking at different districts within the city. Then the impact forecast also, which then lead to the anticipatory actions or response actions that can be considered, followed by a step which required partnerships with other institutions, which is basically the costing the anticipatory action, and then measuring the benefits of implementing it to demonstrate that this value chain can be implemented in a sustainable manner. So the challenge that we have is particularly on those building these partnerships with other sectors who will help to improve the impact forecast, then the anticipatory action updates, and then costing this and assessing the benefits related to it to, on one hand, raise awareness of our policymakers, including city-level policymakers, mayors, and then creating conditions for sustainable early warning for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kamga. First, I wish to beg your pardon because this will be a last-minute change on the panel. I made a mistake, and we are moving from Niger to Cameroon. I wish to introduce now the Director General of the Cameroon Med Service, Simplice Chindatsaso. He's also a member of the Executive Council of World Meteorological Organization. He is performing a brilliant task changing and evolving the National Med Service in Cameroon. I have the opportunity to visit your country and to work when I was at the World Meteorological Organization. And we are tracking what's the activities on Central Africa, and with we are making that training on SAF nowcasting, so there are several activities that still have touched with the Spanish teams. I will request you to explain from your perspective what should be the needs from your country, with service, but also country, in terms of the use of both all the levels that you need to implement your national adaptation plans for climate, for land use, all the perspectives that a modern and performant national med service would request, and also connect to societal with your ministries, with your other national institutions. That should be the request to regional organizations, to UN, or to donors, to international donors for bilateral support. Please, you have the floor.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I will start by saying that international cooperation has been doing a lot, particularly for National Meteorological Service like ours with the limited capacity. I will say that to put in place a National Meteorological Service and run its activities, you need to have professionals. And we start by benefiting from international cooperation through training of meteorologists that can come and work at the national level. And that is very important. It will also raise the issue of sharing data, and we benefited through international cooperation, particularly WMO, on the elaboration of guidelines for data collection that we use to make sure that what we are doing are standard practices, and also share our data and benefit from data from other WMO members that is shared with us. The case is with the satellite meteorological data. Up to today, we have no satellite, but we have access to satellite meteorological data to elaborate our forecast. In terms of elaboration of product, meteorological and climatological products, World Meteorological Center are there. We also have a regional meteorological center and a regional climatological center that has more capacity, and that really send to us products that we can use to elaborate more accurate forecasts at national level. That is what globally we benefit from the international cooperation. If you take the case of my country, you will realize that the country is very dry in the northern part and very wet in the southern part. And you need a lot of capacity to run such meteorological services with variety of climate. And you can therefore think about the international cooperation or bilateral cooperation to benefit from tools that are developed by other meteorological service that can be a neighboring country or country that you are having the same hazards. In terms of water resource management, we have 3 inter-country basin organization. That is the Niger Basin, the Lac Chad Basin, and the Congo Basin that we share in our country. And we should make sure that we have a cooperation, a good cooperation with the neighboring country that are in the same basin with us, to make sure that water resources in those basins are managed in coordination. Today, we have realized that we have more presence of dust affecting the country in the northern part, and thanks to Spain agency product, we have been able in the past year to follow and give accurate information to our population to avoid the negative impact of these dust events that we observe very frequent. So our need may be in terms of strengthening that cooperation. I talk about training. Today, there is a real need in training, capacity building, And also when it's come to data collection, we know that data collection are moving from manual methods to more automatic methods. And we can also benefit through the cooperation from the experience of others countries that are already established an automatic network to not to be faced on to the same difficulty that they have when establishing, to avoid those difficulties and to really integrate that new technology. Also in terms of the products, we know that we are in the context of climate change and we need to deliver more accurate products. Sharing of methods is very important, so we need to benefit from the methods that are developed in other countries, the tools to follow the hazard, to give more accurate forecast. So basically those are the needs that can come from a national meteorological service like ours that has limited capacity. To close my word, I will just say that we are in a context of climate change, which is a global issue, and we think that the response or the approach should also be global in the case that no one is left behind. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing your views and your very, let's say, close to the ground approach. So in terms of country level, no? Thank you very much. And now, before going to a round of exchange and questions between you and the panelists, I will make a question to you. So the question is why we are here. Why we are in a conference of the parties of the UN Framework for Climate Change Convention. Because the greenhouse gases concentration have changed clearly. So let me introduce the last speaker today, Dr. Oksana Tarasova. She came from, her background is impressive, the background and the present situation. No? She came from Lomonosov State Institute from Moscow and Max Planck Institute for Chemistry in Germany. She has more than 100 peer-review papers and coming and growing. And she's from, since 2013 or 14, the responsible under different entitlements of the Greenhouse Monitoring Network of World Meteorological Organization. Spain is contributing also, so we are a strong supporter of her activities. And please, Oksana, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Actually, I've worked in World Meteorological Organization since 2009, so my experience with coordination of global activities is much longer. And as I've been working on the whole atmospheric chemical composition, not only just greenhouse gases, we need to look at the whole perspective of where is the technical cooperation or any kind of international cooperation required if you address the broader environmental agenda. And looking at the broader environmental agenda, you can go from the things like a very small scale, for example, the episodes of local or urban air pollution, which echoes a lot with what Andrea said on the actions which would be required at the local scale. But it also applies to, let's say, regional phenomena. For example, if you talk about the biomass burning, then you have a pollution event which actually goes across the country or sometimes across several countries. Or if you have the episodes of sand and dust storms, which also go from one country to the other country. And that requires the transboundary cooperation on those impacts. But when we move to the larger scale impact of human activities on the Earth, we go to the things which we call climate change, because it is a phenomenon which pronounces itself on a global scale, and of course we need to address it on a global scale. But there are several layers of international cooperation which is required to tackle the climate change problem. And I would put it like in 3 different categories. The category 1 is international cooperation on policy. You cannot tackle the global problem if there is no international cooperation through which you can reach international agreement, which is global in its nature. The second one is international cooperation on science. Because to tackle the problem, we need to address the problem and we need to understand what constitutes a problem and what are the mechanisms, tools, and solutions you can offer to a given problem. So that brings us to science. And a third part of the international cooperation is a cooperation which is related to the building capacity. And building capacity can happen at several levels, at the level of infrastructure, at the level of human resources, and at the level of the technical, purely technical cooperation as well. So let's look at each of those aspects of international cooperation. So why do we need international cooperation on policy? Well, if we look at the Paris Agreement, the Paris Agreement talks about 1.5 degree of global increase in temperature. How would you converge to 1.5? Well, you need to have an agreement between different countries on what are the tolerable level of impacts you want to have, and you need to agree how would you actually document and measure this 1.5 degree, because 1.5 degrees is a global estimate. So everybody on the globe should measure the temperature and should use the same baseline and should use the same evaluation of the increase over global average to converge to the global policy. But what drives this climate change? What drives the temperature? Well, the temperature is driven by the human impact on the levels of greenhouse gases. It's the levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are driving the response in climate. What do we know about the levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere? Well, that's a pretty complex phenomenon. We need a lot of science to understand the level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are driven by the human activities, but they're also driven by the natural phenomena. They are also driven by the uptakes of the anthropogenic emissions by the forests or terrestrial ecosystem and by the ocean. So about 25% of what humans emit goes into the ocean and about 25% goes into terrestrial biosphere. And those, the terrestrial biosphere and the ocean, do respond to climate change themselves. So we need a lot of technical cooperation on science to understand what will be the response of the concentrations in the future if the uptakes will change. But what do we know about the levels of greenhouse gases? How can we even talk about the levels of greenhouse gases? Do we understand it? Well, we do. We do understand it because World Meteorological Organization is addressing the levels of greenhouse gases since 1975. And since 1998, we have a global program, which is called Global Atmosphere Watch Program, which coordinates high-quality observations and international data exchange of greenhouse gases. So this program, the Global Atmosphere Watch Program, evaluates the requirements to the observations, it evaluates the good practices, how would you do the evaluation, and it also facilitates the data exchange, which are currently all submitted to the World Data Center on Greenhouse Gases, which is supported by international cooperation and contribution of Japan. And based on those observations, we can actually calculate global average. That's a big exercise. How do we converge from 150 stations which are performing observation to one number which is the global average with uncertainty of 0.2 ppm at the level of 419 ppm. So it's really tremendous effort of the whole global community. But the point is that when we come to this global average, it's really very good target. We understand how to do that. But the global average is unfortunately the average, which means that the global average has a very small sensitivity to the changes in emissions. As we demonstrated in the economic crisis in 2008, 2009, the COVID, where we had a reduction in emissions of 5.4%, we don't see it in global average. So the global average is a good indicator on the state of the global climate, but it's not a good indicator that helps countries to take action. So we need to move to the higher resolution information and more timely information. And for this purpose, World Meteorological Organization initiated the development of the system, which is called Global Greenhouse Gas Watch. And what this Global Greenhouse Gas Watch will do, it will build on all the knowledge which we've done within Global Atmosphere Watch program and within meteorological community and meteorological modeling, and we will move to the production of the gridded 1 degree by 1 degree net fluxes of main greenhouse gases on a monthly basis with a monthly delay, which means that all the countries in the world will have an information at hand that will support their mitigation strategy because they could see the response in their greenhouse gas fluxes much faster than currently done with inventory or much better than it's done with a global average. But what does it take to build a system? Well, there's a lot of things which needs to be put in place. The system will use global observing system, global observations of greenhouse gases from the ground, from the satellite, additional observation of what we call priors that are supported, that are needed to actually establish the initial state of the system. Then we need a lot of statistical information which goes in the system. And then we need modeling system, the global modeling system, which can accommodate carbon cycle and the cycles of greenhouse gases. So it's not just a numerical or the prediction, it's a much complex system. And we need technical cooperation or scientific cooperation to actually get those systems right and to get those systems correct. But we also need international cooperation on observing systems. There are substantial gaps in observations, and we need international cooperations to build the infrastructure on the ground to actually drive the input to the modeling systems. We also need a lot of international cooperation, for example, between satellite agencies to make sure that the data which are coming from the satellite system are being made available and being assimilated in numerical weather prediction and being assimilated in those Earth system models very fast to produce those products. But when we come up with the result of this product, then we also need a lot of cooperation on what do we do with it? How do we use it? This is a new piece of information which is not known to many countries. For example, if we produce those gridded fluxes and they go to Andrea, what Andrea will do with this 1 by 1 degree net CO2? Well, probably he will start thinking, why do I need this product at all? How does it help me to actually support my mitigation action? So here you can see that there will be several layers of capacity development, which will talk first about building the infrastructure. We need to build a global infrastructure and we need technical cooperation. Second, we need to train a lot of people because currently it's 150 stations which we have on the globe and we have pretty small, relatively small scientific community that can support high quality observations because these are very tricky measurements. We need technical cooperation on agreed standards to perform those measurements. And we also need to have a technical cooperation on the data exchange. How do we exchange those data? But beyond that, we need also to build capacity of the stakeholders on the use of the products which will be created by this system. So the policy makers, the decision makers. And then from those global products, of course, we need to work regionally and locally to convert those 1 by 1 degree, which is 100 by 100 kilometer flux, into something which is even more relevant for policy. That requires a lot of science because you need to do the attribution to the specific sector and you need to do the high resolution modeling, which is currently not being implemented by many countries. I mean, I can count on the fingers of one hand that it's just 7 countries who use this information to support their mitigation on national scale. So a lot of international cooperation in all the different areas. And we are very grateful to Spain because Spain is helping a lot with the capacity development and equality assurance. It runs the calibration centers, particularly in Isania, where we bring many countries to work together to understand how the equipment works. And also where Spain provides a lot of support for the policy engagement and a lot of support for actually training people in doing the measurements. So I would like to conclude that international cooperation, in particular in the areas of greenhouse gases and addressing environmental agenda and addressing climate change, is absolutely essential. It's key at many different levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oksana. I wish to add for people that will be outside for you that are participating here that Spain is contributing to the European Space Agency, to the EUMETSAT system for the satellite observations, to the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, and is supporting strongly the WMO in terms of mandatory contributions and voluntary contributions. We have also the support to regional activities in Africa and in Iberoamerica. So we are, I believe, that we are firm believers of those principles that we are explaining here. I will stop here. I will open the floor for you participants here, and finally, I will request a final intervention, a final statement, a sentence, in order to close the event. So I will, open the floor. Perhaps we are 5 here. I will request to introduce each one by one, say where are you from, your institution, and giving the opportunity to make a question to the panel. Please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Juan Carlos, and I come from Canary Islands, Spain, from the University of La Laguna. First of all, I would like to appreciate your work, your clarity and exposition of this huge work that is cooperation between all the parts in the world. We are, from my precedents, we are worried about what happens with islands. But usually, a lot of studies are focused on continents, and mainly when we are talking about downscaling. So islands will have problems because we don't have perhaps enough information to take that action, to provide that information that you commented before. So in that sense, from the University of La Laguna, we are collaborating with another countries to provide high-resolution climate projections to Macaronesian region, from Azores to Cape Verde. But we are almost alone, so we need another institutions that can help. We are now trying to promote a collaboration with IMET and other institutions worldwide to make specific actions for islands. So I think that's my worry. Thanks a lot for your participation.
There is any reaction, having in mind that Canary Islands is region 1, is African islands. So, Andre, you wish to react?
Yeah, just to highlight that, this is a typical case of downscaling, building high-resolution information. And as I say, it's, let's say, our priority really to take the global products that are provided and then building methods and tools that helps to generate something at those scales of islands and also at the local level in the countries. So thank you for the addition.
If I may. Well, I think when we talk about islands, it is important to remember that islands are ultimately connected with the ocean and sea around those. So what is important is that, and I think it's been a continuous struggle to ensure that the measurements are performed in the executive economic zone, which is actually close to the islands, and that those So when you talk about the islands, it's not just the land, it's like the whole system which is there. And sometimes this coastal areas, they are considered oftentimes as a solution for climate change. So that the whole thing should be included in the consideration.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Romeo Sustaining Nkurunziza. I'm NOCAP, deployed to support ACMAD to deliver climate services. That's wonderful topics. And since we are sharing, the world is sharing the climate change burden, my question is, part of the world, they are advanced in those systems. Since we are sharing this burden of climate change, in this cooperation perspective, how can we leverage the existence, advanced and successful system in place can be transferred to others so that we can beat the pace of climate change? Thank you.
Well, there are many examples of collaboration from the developing world to least developed countries. The very concept of cascading products is a good example. In Africa, with the exception of Morocco, there's no other country with a supercomputer. So if African nations were to run their own numerical weather prediction models, probably they'll never have a forecast. And that's why you have the global producing centers running numerical weather prediction models and making the products available to regional centers who post-process those products and then make them available to National Meteorological Services who cannot process or handle NWP products. Today, as we speak, there are many National Meteorological and Hydrological Services who cannot take NWP output directly and generate a forecast out of that. So that's one example of the level and type of cooperation which takes place. But the second and probably the most effective way of cooperation has been in the form of twinning. In many cases, we've had experts from a relatively a developed country going and working side by side with the experts from a least or less developed country. And in that process, as somebody was saying here, my colleague from Cameroon, they facilitate the deployment of tools. They work with colleagues to teach them certain methodologies on how to use those tools and provide a lot of training and capacity building which enables those institutions to work. But we also have to understand that we have 193 members and therefore going into each individual member could be a very daunting and difficult exercise. And therefore we work with specialized centers such as ACMAD here and others, AgriMet in your region. Recently when we had instability in Niger, we had students who were at AgriMet from different countries in Africa being trained. And so we use economies of scale whereby we concentrate national meteorological staff into a training in one place so that we can reach with one training exercise many different countries. But we tried different options. And there's, of course, a lot of cooperation, we call it South-South cooperation, where, for example, you have Nigeria supporting countries like Ghana, Liberia, and others, because they're relatively advanced. And in North Africa, you have Morocco supporting countries in the vicinity of Morocco. So those are very good examples of cooperation. However, and this is something very important, operating a national meteorological and hydrological services is a responsibility of the government of that particular country. So we cannot replace the role of the government in empowering the National Meteorological and Hydrological Service to do its service, because we have international cooperation. International cooperation supports, but ultimately it's the responsibility of the government in a particular country to make sure that they have what they need to run an effective and capable Met service, able to provide products and services which would address user needs.
Okay, we are a little bit close to. Okay.
On the last one for the government, is it any way, or do you involve the government? Because sometimes if the government, they are in the politics, sometimes they appoint someone because of political reason, not because he's got his scientific or climatological background. So how do you go work with the government so that the people who are involved, who the decision makers in line of this climate and meteorology, do have that sense of where we are heading?
Well, WMO is a standard-setting organization. We set standards and we provide guidelines on how things should be done. We have basic requirements for meteorologists, for example. So those requirements are published. So if you're looking for a meteorologist, there are basic things which the meteorologist should fulfill. Now, if a particular government chooses to not follow those principles, that's beyond WMO. But our role is to make sure that we make those things available, and they're available for use by countries. However, we do engage governments in different aspects. For example, in Africa, because of the weakness and limited visibility of National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, we created what we called AMCOMET. AMCOMET is the African Ministerial Conference on Meteorology, where ministers responsible for meteorology come together and discuss issues of meteorology in the region. For example, your question should have been posed to the ministers of AMCOMET, say, well, why in a particular country meteorologists who do not have qualifications, or people in meteorological services would not have qualification, are being appointed to do work which is relatively very demanding and very technical. But what we can do is advocacy, what we can do is promotion, what we can do is promote best practices of countries who have done well by following the guidelines and the standards, and motivate those ones who probably are not following suit to do what the others are doing.
Thank you. We can have 5 minutes more? No? So maybe one question more and final remarks from the panel. Please.
Thanks. My name's Jocelyn Turnbull. I'm from New Zealand and I'm a greenhouse gas scientist. And I also co-chair the WMO committee, IGUS, which is about connecting greenhouse gas observations with policy outcomes. I have to say you've actually stolen my question, which was going to be about how you see capacity building working. Particularly with greenhouse gas observations, it's expensive equipment, it's still quite novel, so how do we get that into places where that capacity doesn't currently exist? What are the right ways to go about doing that?
I will perhaps, tricky. Cameroon, simply. What's your opinion about this challenge? So it's supposed that it's a global challenge. Every country needs to have some measurements. From your point of view, what are the perspectives from your country to implement or to contribute, or which will be the external requirements, so the help that you will need to implement a monitoring network in Cameroon?
Yeah, I think that is a very important question. But as I say, particularly for the country with the limited capacity, like Cameroon, we give priority to network of collection of meteorological data. But if in the coming year we are capable to put in place a meteorological network that follow the G-bond regulation, we can then follow with the collection of the greenhouse gases data, and it depends on also in the international cooperation and that the support we may have. So in that domain, we are in real need of support from the developing country to carry out those observations. What I can say particularly for my country is that with the political will, the government has been able to recruit and train many young professionals. So what we need to carry out all those activities are just equipment, and we could be able to collect the data and share with the meteorological community.
Right. Doubly more recognizing the difficulty many countries have in maintaining and sustaining observations, has established a new facility called Sustainable Observation Financing Facility, SOF. Of course, SOF is only for meteorological observations for now. Doesn't cover yet the oceans and doesn't cover, for example, greenhouse gases. But the concept of SOF is to recognize where observations are needed to improve the quality of NWP products. For example, we have major gaps in Africa, we have major gaps in the Pacific. So countries will be supported to operate a number of stations in their territories under the condition that those observation stations would have to make the data available to the entire world so that the world community could benefit from that data to improve NWP. So that's the advantage. And WMO approved at its last Congress the WMO greenhouse gas monitoring system, which hopefully, if operational, might follow the same approach of SOF, which would identify areas where observations are needed and eventually make those support the existence of those observations. But that's still in process, and perhaps Oksana here might want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke about Global Greenhouse Gas Watch, and we would like to follow the process as with GBON, really to get some observations into the regulatory framework so that the countries can actually ask for the compliance. But there's one more point which we can use actually to build a capacity and to respond to, let's say, your comment that there is no capacity. There is an untapped resource in many of the countries, which is academia. There is a lot of academic research which has been performed outside of med services, and that would be really pretty powerful resource to tap in and get much better collaboration between the national med services and academia, particularly in African countries where we know that there are African working groups in International Atmospheric Chemistry Project, and these are active scientists, and they can help operational agencies within the countries to build the capacity. So we should not underestimate the role of academia in pulling the system together.
Thank you, Oksana. We are going to close the event with a last question, please.
My name is Wenlasida Sandrine Kombere. I want to ask how international cooperation can do to support national med services in the climate services communication, because there is a gap in the communication area. I don't know if there is a mechanism that is already implemented somewhere to support them. Thank you.
Andre, maybe?
One of the weaknesses in the chain today is on the communication aspect. The challenge to move forward is that in many of the least developed countries' med services, the communication team is not strong. So what we have in the process now is to identify at least focal points on communication and to have them exposed to communication programs and communication-related training and exposure in regional centers and in collaboration with our international partners. So NORCAP is one with whom we have set up a scheme of encouraging countries who have focal points in communication to come to ACMAT, and then we use them to operate workshops, organize conferences, share information on Twitter, update the website, and this progressively, if expanded, could end up with having in the med services communication expert well trained. And it is a field that actually have been up to some extent neglected, because ourselves at ACMAT, we have been training on monitoring weather and climate, making seasonal forecasts, weather forecasts, at some point on databases, but building capacity on communication has been weak, and it is one of the reasons why the visibility actually of med services at the country level is still to be improved. So that's let's say a strategic axis of intervention on which we are actually engaged.
Thank you. So please.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add that particularly in Africa, communication focal points have been designated in National Meteorological Service on the request of the regional office of WMO. So, and we also know that at that regional office there is one communication officer that is in link with the national communication designated focal point. Maybe the problem at that level is the training, because most of the communication focal points that are designated within meteorological services come with the meteorological background and need some training on how to communicate. And I will also mention that through WMO cooperation, we have some meteorological services that provide platform, like Hong Kong Observatory, that provide platform for us to put our products on the web that can easily be accessed.
Thank you very much. Felipe, wish to add?
Well, I could have answered this question, but we are constrained with time.
Okay, so maybe we can close here. I will invite you as panelists to send in written your last thoughts in order to summarize for the. Well, we will record in that way to complement the material. And I wish to thank also the participants, the public, and people that is coming from easily following by streaming. Thank you very much. I guess that would be a satisfactory experience. And I apologize for every mistake made on the preparation. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. We can exactly make a